Hi everyone, this is PDKJim 2386, welcoming you to this video. As you can tell by the title, this is called Assassinating the Hitman. This video has come about basically because in the first Q&A video, there was a question that was brought to my attention that was sent to me by Kyle. Sorry, I can't remember where you were from. I haven't got the paper in front of me and I haven't watched back the episode. But you'd asked me a question saying that you had seen a recent shoot of Bret Hart, and he was slagging off everything that Triple H had done in the business, and his match against The Undertaker he gave a 3 or 4 out of 10, being generous. And before I'd really gotten into the entire question, before I'd even really started it, I kind of went off on a tangent and said that I have more respect for Triple H than I do Bret Hart, and that when I have more time to express my views and opinions on the question, I will. And seems as I now have a lot more time to discuss my feelings on this, now is as good a time as any to share with each and every single one of you my views and opinions of Bret Hart. This is PDKJim 2386, and it's time for me to assassinate the Hitman. Now, the question that was brought forward to me, I can try and do it in brief, is that, as I've mentioned before, that Kyle had seen a shoot interview of Bret the Hitman Hart, and he was saying that his opinions on Triple H were, needless to say, very low. So he said his match with The Undertaker was a 3 or a 4 out of 10, being generous. He said, you know, Triple H has only really gotten anywhere because of him marrying Stephanie McMahon. And I was also asked about Triple H's legacy, what he's done for the business, what he's contributed, and what he could still do for the business. But before I get to any of that, this is really all about my opinions on Bret Hart. Well, I mean, Bret the Hitman Hart, he really had everything in the WWF. He really did. But, you know, for namesake and God knows what else, I'll just call it WWE, since everybody seems to be more comfortable calling it that than, you know, its actual name. So, Bret Hart was basically spoon-fed everything in the WWF, in my opinion. Sure, he had a couple of run-ins with some of the boys in the back, and he felt that due to his heritage and due to like his training and whatnot, and everything he'd really done in the business, that he should be handed everything, basically. So that is just basically one part of what I'd really think, but for Bret Hart to go on at Triple H really is no surprise, because I'm going to bring up the very, very sore subject now, which would be the Montreal Screwjob. For those of you that don't know, the Montreal Screwjob was when Bret the Hitman Hart, obviously, was screwed out of the world title in Montreal, Canada. And he decided to throw a bit of a tangent, and then he went off to WCW. What some of you might not know is that what Bret Hart actually wanted to do was to keep the WWF title and take it over to WCW. Now, obviously, Vince McMahon isn't going to let that happen. He's not going to let his title go to the competition, and Bret Hart wasn't willing to drop the title. And needless to say that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had already had their problems in the past. As you know, it's probably one of the most notable feuds in the company's history. And just to say that he was friends with Triple H as well really didn't make the matters any better, because obviously if you know the Clique, which would be this, for those of you who know, that is the symbol for the Clique, which would be Scott Hall. Well, at the time it was Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels and Triple H. I'm going to get more into that later. But the fact is that just because Bret Hart did not like what Shawn Michaels was doing, and he didn't like what Triple H was doing, just because they were all buddy-buddy, and Vince kind of liked what was going on at the time, you know, they're just two friends hanging out, doing a good job in the company, getting heat, doing what they needed to do. But obviously at this time there wasn't like any, well, before said Montreal Screwjob, there was no real DXing going on. There was no them as a tag team. But you knew they were good friends, and obviously when they came out to help each other, one another, like in a couple of months or weeks or whichever it was beforehand, you know, no one had really known. But as it went on later in the line, hang on. No, it may have been a little earlier, because if I'm not mistaken, because now I'm trying not to get confused, because there was another incident that had actually happened where I believe the contracts for Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, and Kevin Nash, Diesel, their contracts were coming up, and I think one of the two of them had a match against Shawn Michaels, or, well, whatever it was. There was a match that had happened, and Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels and Triple H were all celebrating in the ring, and you know, the fans blew up about this because they thought it was going to be a new faction or whatever. But no, this was kind of like the unveiling of the Clique and you know, the parting of ways. So it was more like a public goodbye than anything else. And obviously Vince wasn't happy about this being, you know, aired on a show or a house show. I can't believe which of the two it was. He wasn't going to obviously punish Scott Hall or Kevin Nash because they were going anyway. Shawn Michaels was going to be up for a title push or some sort of big push anyway, so the only person who was going to get punished at the time was going to be Triple H. But, you know, I digress, because obviously we're kind of going off subject. But Bret Hart, he, again, like I've said earlier, did not like anything that Shawn Michaels or Triple H were doing, just because they were close friends and they probably didn't give anybody else a ride in the car, you know, whilst going show to show. You know, it just really pisses me off that Bret Hart has to spend most of his time bitching, whining and complaining that he got screwed in Montreal in his, you know, proper last match in the WF. So, now, where I'm going to come from here, going on to the Montreal Screwjob and so on and so forth, that even before any of this actually happened, Bret Hart's history with Vince McMahon is, you know, timid at the very, very best. Bret didn't respect, and probably still doesn't respect, Vince McMahon, in all honesty. If I am entirely honest, yes, he probably does not respect Vince McMahon at all. He might have come onto Raw and he might have, you know, got like these DVD deals and stuff, but, you know, heart of hearts, I still don't think that he respects Vince McMahon. And the reason is that Vince McMahon, in my mind, was more of an authority figure towards Bret Hart than anybody else was. Because like I've said earlier, Bret Hart has been more spoon-fed anything else in his entire career than anybody else, just because of, you know, he was trained by, you know, the legendary Stu Hart in the legendary Stu Hart dungeon. He's got family ties, you know, he was with Davey Boy Smith, he's got Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Owen Hart, and so on and so forth. But, you know, there was times where, you know, the Anvil was getting a push with Bret in the tag team as the Hart Foundation. There was a time when Owen Hart was getting a push on his own, Unfortunately, not to the heavyweight title, but he got a push with Yokozuna, I believe it was, at one point. British Bulldog was getting a push at one point as well. I remember specifically he'd won the European title as well, which coincidentally he lost to Shawn Michaels. Probably something else he's going to bitch about. But it was needless to say that Bret Hart was... he went to Vince, and he'd even said, you know, before Montreal Screwjob was going to happen, you know, Vince, I've got the title, I don't intend on dropping it, I know my contract's up and I intend on leaving and going to WCW. And Vince had just given him the speech of, you know, we have a time-honoured tradition, if anyone's going to leave, we'll do it all fair and square, everybody gets a nice farewell, you drop the title, we part ways on a good basis. Bret Hart did not want any of that. So Vince McMahon had to do what he had to do, which was for business, and it was not to have his, you know, main world's title going over to the competition. Because if we cast our minds back to, I believe it was somewhere between 1990 and 1992, I think. It may be a bit earlier, but don't quote me on that. Ric Flair. He'd left, it was either Ted or Bill Turner's NWA, and he brought the world title over with him. Now, the difference here is that Ric Flair actually had something like $5,000 or $50,000 down on the belt, because as it was back in the days, and I've actually seen this myself in the business nowadays, that you have money put down on the title, so if it gets lost or if it gets wrecked, damaged, you know, they use that money to buy a new one. That's what Ric Flair did. When he was told to drop the strap, no, actually, when he was told to give the title back, he said, well, I want my money, I want my $50,000. And, of course, you know, Turner said, no, well, fuck it, we're not giving you the money, take the belt with you. That's why Ric Flair bought that world title with him into the WWF. Bret Hart wanted to do the same. As far as I'm aware, there was no policy on like new belts being bought in case of loss or damage or whatnot. So what he was just trying to do was that he saw several years earlier that Ric Flair had bought in a world title and he made it look awesome. Because he's the Nature Boy, everybody looks up to him, and he's a, you know, 5-star athlete, you know, at the time. Not saying he's not a 5-star athlete now, but you know, he's a great personality to the sport. And like I said, he bought the title over, and he had a legitimate claim to the title. You know, he had the $50,000 on it, so it was, you know, technically rightfully his. He'd not lost it, and he'd not been damaged. And if you'd seen the video where he first turns up, you know, Bobby Heenan's got the title. It looks beautiful. It's well taken care of. It looks, you know, phenomenal. But Bret Hart obviously just wanted to be like, well, I got the WWF title, so I'll just take it over to WCW, like Ric Flair brought the NWA title to WWF. No, bullshit. Bret the Hitman Hart just wanted to put himself over, make himself look cool. You know, Bret Hart, fuck you. You know, just because you see someone else do something, you know, you think you're going to do it like 10 times better. Fuck you, and fuck you again. And of course he gets into the WCW, and who does he find there when he gets there? Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. You remember what I said earlier? Click. So, of course, he goes from one place to another, and he's still as miserable as fuck, and he's being told, you know, I'm Bret Hart, I'm the Hitman, you know, spoon-feed me fucking titles. They had to give him the United States title in the WCW just to fucking shut him up. You know, it makes me glad that Bill Goldberg kicked him in the fucking skull and ended his career. But you know what? You know, he's still whinging and whining and complaining, you know, Montreal Screwjob this, Vince McMahon screwed me out of this. No, Bret Hart, fuck you 1,000,000 times over. You're just getting complete butthurt because you didn't want to drop the strap in a good, you know, well-honoured tradition. And, you know, you just had to be a complete fucking prick over the entire thing. You know, I don't care how many people are going to message me saying, "Oh, Bret Hart is the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be." Fuck each and every single one of you smarmy, smart mark twats. Seriously. Is he the best there is? No. Is he the best there was? No. Is he the best there ever will be? Fuck no. Let's just go by pure example here. You know, as much as I don't like the guy, John Cena, how many times has he held the world title and the WWE title compared to Bret Hart? Bret Hart, John Cena. John Cena has held the title more times than Bret Hart has. Let's see, another example. Hulk Hogan. Let's talk charisma. Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart. How much charisma does Hulk Hogan have to Bret Hart in their prime? Boom. Hulk Hogan, way more charisma. Bret Hart, yeah, probably him in Canada. You know, technically, is he the best wrestler in the world? No. Was he the best technical wrestler in the world? Possibly, at that point. But, you know, as best there is, best there was, best there ever will be? No. Has there been better technical wrestlers than Bret Hart? Yes, 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 and fuck yes. Just 3 examples off the top of my head. You can try and prove me wrong. Doug Williams, Nigel McGuinness, and Bryan Danielson. Prove me the fuck wrong. Submission experts, each and every single one of them. Doug Williams, awesome at submissions. Nigel McGuinness, awesome at submissions. Daniel Bryan, awesome at submissions. I think you can see where I'm going. If I'm going to use another example, I'm going to take boxing. Muhammad Ali. He called himself the greatest of all time within the first couple of his fights. Could you believe it? Yes. Did he prove it? Yes. Did he back up his words? Yes, yes, yes. And even more, fuck yes. Muhammad Ali is the greatest boxer of all time. One of the greatest boxers of all time, I should say. Because obviously, if we're going to keep going into the future, there may be someone who is better than Muhammad Ali. And as the crazy world of professional wrestling has proved, that better wrestlers have come along, better wrestlers than Bret Hart, better technical wrestlers than Bret Hart, better submission experts than Bret Hart. So, you know, Bret Hart can say, I'm the best there is, I'm the best there was, I'm the best there ever will be. Well, I'm the best there is, maybe, at that time. Possibly, if you had the championship, that would be true. If you didn't, you wasn't obviously the best. The best there ever will be? No, because there's always going to be someone who's going to be better than you. And are you the best there was? No. Because obviously there would have been people before you who were better. There were probably people at that time period, you know, who could have been classed as being better than you. But obviously with the WWF being the more focal point of the sport, obviously, you could have claimed to have been the best. But, needless to say, you know, he's still going on, he's still whinging, and, you know, it kind of brings up the point of, you know, he really can't let go. He's just really taking it just too far. He's just making himself look like a fuckwit. So, you know, that's my opinions on Bret Hart. He tried to put himself over when he had the title. He tried to take it over to WCW. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. That would be kind of like me if I was in TNA. You know, just as an example. I'm not being fucking serious, but if it is, awesome. No. Yes. No. Yes. TNA. Hire me. Yeah. But just, again, say, for example, if I won the TNA World title and I said, hey, I'm going to go to WWE because my contract's up, are they going to let me keep the title? Fuck no. If I did the same, WWE, if I got the title, like either the WWE Championship or the World Championship, said, hey, I'm going to go to TNA, my contract's up, and taking the belt with me. Will that happen? No. Because obviously the business has changed and, you know, people change as well, but Bret Hart just refuses to change. Now, again, I've said everything I really need to say. Bret Hart on a final thought. If you have a thought, let it go. You know, time has come and time has gone. Your time has obviously gone. Stop trying to hold on to the limelight. Everybody is going to remember your name for one reason or another. Most notably, the Montreal Screwjob. Now, I'm going to have to follow up on the question because Kyle asked me about Triple H, what he's done for the business and his legacy. Now, I'll try and keep this short because, there's not really much I need to explain. Triple H has headlined several WrestleManias. He's won the championship various amounts of times. And he's had 2 or so matches against The Undertaker at WrestleMania, obviously lost both times. I think I've only seen one of the WrestleMania matches against Undertaker, and quite frankly, I thought it was an excellent match, despite what Bret Hart says. What he's done for the business, obviously, he's seen through several different ages, he's seen through several different eras. He's been in it for several years and now he's taken a corporate position. Whether he's happy with it or not, I don't know. Will he ever come back to the ring? Hopefully. Near future? I'm not so sure. Next couple of years or so? Quite possibly. He's probably going to be spending more time with his family now because, he's got kids. And, we'll just see. But what he's done for the business, obviously, like I've just said, he's seen through several years, several eras. And needless to say, he's probably had some of the most memorable matches in WWE, WWF history. And, I don't think he's really got much left to prove. He's won most of the titles. He's spilled probably more blood than any other worker that I can think of. He's seen it all, he's done it all, he's gone around the world, he's like a household name in the business. And, I think that Triple H has basically done everything that he really needs to do. So, if he comes back, it might just be for publicity. Well, not in the bad kind of way. But, it might just be for a storyline. It might be to give somebody a push. And for all we know, it could be for another new group. Or like another stable or whatever. Which, quite frankly, I think would be awesome. Maybe if you took on the role of a manager or a mentor or something like that, I think that would especially kick ass. But, as of everything else, he's been involved in a lot of the WE history, obviously with the invasion of WCW in the Monday Night Wars. He kind of helped mould the character of Stone Cold as well with DX and everything. Obviously DX, there's also Evolution. As well as, there was the invasion storylines as well. I'm not entirely sure how much of that he was involved in. I can't exactly remember. But yeah, obviously the running over of Stone Cold as well. There was the extremely brutal straight fight at the 2000 Royal Rumble in New York, which was phenomenal. Probably one of my favourite matches of all time. And, has Triple H done a lot for the business? Yes, he has. And, he got given the name the Cerebral Assassin. The pun is in the title, people. So, obviously, if Bret Hart wanted to come back and Triple H was willing to come back, if those two had a match, maybe then... they could settle their differences in the ring. If they're going to put up the old fists, do it. If they're going to have a match, do it. My my first, last and only bet to win would be Triple H. The final thought on this video is Bret Hart, you know, you've had your time, you still want to keep on whinging, you know, you do that. You're just going to make yourself look like more of a fucking idiot than you already are. Yes, you've obviously made a name. You give yourself the moniker of the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. But Triple H was the cerebral assassin. He obviously caught more titles than you did. It might, you know, it could be, in your words, because he was sleeping with the boss's daughter. No. It's because of how dedicated he is to the business. How dedicated he is to the other boys in the back. How much he's willing to help the boys in the back. You, Bret Hart, were only there for your own sake. You are only there to get your own push and to sell your own merch. You weren't willing to help any of the other boys. Nothing. You're just concerned about family and your own friends, and that's it. You couldn't care about anybody else. I've been PDKJim 2386, and this is fuck you to Bret Hart.